I know. When it comes to accounting and bookkeeping, at the best of times, us creatives can potentially cringe or run in fear or bury our head in the sand and let others look after the numbers for us. But what I can tell you is from doing this for quite some time and going from real struggle street to now having a profitable business in the performing arts is that the moment things really changed for me and I started to get ahead financially and with my numbers was when I took my head out of the sand to which it had been buried, and I made a decision to really understand the numbers. And though I don't do my bookkeeping, I did for a while, though I don't do my bookkeeping myself, I have someone do it for me. I am across my numbers. I'm doing regular weekly metrics. I'm watching my profit and loss statement. I'm understanding what's happening in my business. Now, today I've got an expert on by the name of Kimberly Rodney. And she is the director and owner of My Bookkeeping Coach. Now, she talks about, having an authentic approach to keeping your books minus the fear factor, which I think is really interesting because there is a lot of fear when it comes to the numbers, but we want to remove that. Now, I am very much interested in keeping it simple, and that's exactly what Kimberly talks about, how to keep it simple, how to keep it basic. Even if you've got someone else, you need to know what's going on. So she says it's necessary part of biz that is, if you like being profitable, you need to really have your head around those numbers. So here we go with Kimberly. And before we jump in, I just want to also remind you that today, yes, friends, today is the last day that doors are open for 2023 for Talent Manager Bootcamp. So I'm going to pop that link in the show notes. Speaking of money and revenue, I know that talent management service has really increased my revenue and profitability, but also my clients as well. And I'd love that for you. I'd love that for you in your studio biz. So if you're interested in becoming a talent manager and representing your students in film, television, theatre, commercial, musicals, on stage and more, today's your last chance to jump in for this year. Now, if you head to the link and you're listening to this late, don't worry. You can pop your name on the wait list. So, hopefully you catch it in time. But if you don't, then just pop your name on the wait list instead. And, we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch next year, I suppose. But for now, let's jump in with the lovely Kimberly Rodney from My Bookkeeping Coach. And here we go. Hello and welcome to Studio Biz and All That Jazz. I'm your performing arts business coach and host, Josephine Lancuba. This show is designed to bring you inspiration, information, and the instruments you need to create and grow the studio biz of your dreams. I will bring you a mix of solo episodes as well as interviews where I tap into the minds of industry experts. My career started as a performer over 2 decades ago. I later became a speaker, theatrical producer, and talent manager, as well as having a successful teaching career in singing, drama, and dance. 10 years into my professional journey, I became a mama of 2 and with a baby on my hip, opened up my very own performing arts studio. From hardship and humble beginnings to 4 studio locations and a multi-6-figure performing arts biz, I know how to attract students and keep them coming back for more. And in the show, I will share with you my experiences to help you thrive and fast-track your path to success. I know you have a spark inside of you with dreams and goals for the future. As your coach and mentor, I'm here to help you step into your limelight and be a cheerleader in your ear each and every week. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk studio biz and all that jazz. Hello, Kimberly Rodney, and welcome to Studio Biz and All That Jazz. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Now, I must say, and it's really funny because
everyone listening, they're creatives, creative businesses. And when you say the word bookkeeping, I got to tell you, people will run scared. Now, you're the, owner and creator of My Bookkeeping Coach, which is for women and mums in business. And, I think that's going to be a really great conversation today because, like I said, creatives get a little bit scared of the numbers and they get a little bit apprehensive when it comes to that. So I think it's a really important conversation because numbers are so important to the viability of our businesses.
Yes.
But before we get into all of that super fun stuff, and I am saying that, listeners, this is going to be fun, don't worry. We'll keep the energy for you. We'll keep it happening.
Yeah.
Tell me about, how you came about, like what's your backstory and how you started bookkeeping and becoming this.
Yeah, so, look, I left school and became an accountant, went to uni, started accounting. I was a tax accountant for many years. During that time, I had 2 children, got married, all of that sort of stuff. When my children were about 15 and 12, 13, I decided to have another baby. And I realised that my tax accounting job was too stressful for me to have that and expand my family. Like, I just wanted to get out of that stressful environment that I was in, working. Like, I would work till 6 p.m. I would have after school care calling me because I would have forgotten to pick my children up because I was at work. It was just, really stressful. I was a bit of a mess. And so I decided that tax accounting wasn't for me anymore, just purely to have more time with my family. So around the same time, I decided that, I wanted to expand the family. So after I quit my job, I decided that, I would just maybe do a bit of bookkeeping and a little bit of money before I decided what I wanted to do. So I took on a few bookkeeping clients, and then I did have another baby. And I realized that it wasn't actually the bookkeeping that I loved, that it was actually helping the people with their systems to make their bookkeeping easier for them. So a lot of people were just intimidated, weren't sure what they were doing, that sort of thing. I had a lot of inquiries about that. So that's where My Bookkeeping Coach was born, because I just had people inquiring about, helping them do their bookkeeping. So from there, I developed my little system that I use in my business. Because trust me, I was a tax accountant. I was not a great bookkeeper. So, my husband has a business as well. And so then I started my business. I was behind on my bookkeeping. I had piles of receipts. I was great at doing other people's bookkeeping because I had that system. It was other people's work, and so I was doing that. But while I was doing their work and while I was frustrated with my own work and my husband's business, I came up with a system to use to make it easier for me to handle what I had to do and when I had to do it. So from there, I started teaching other people that system. And so now it's grown into My Bookkeeping Coach, and that's where I teach people one-on-one in different environments and things like that, different containers.
So tell me, what's for people listening, because some people get confused by this, believe it or not, even seasoned studio owners and people, that have had their business for a while, or some people starting out. What's the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper?
So your accountant will generally handle your taxes and the high-level information that is produced from your bookkeeping system. They'll handle your income tax, they'll help you strategize with your business, look at your profit and loss report, that sort of thing. That's really a tax accountant. A lot of large businesses, like when you think of big multinationals, they've probably got internal accountants as well that are handling the management of their finances and stuff. When it comes to bookkeeping, bookkeepers are at the other end of the scale, working closer with businesses, entering the actual data. If you're in Australia and I mention the word GST or goods and services tax, they will handle all of those things and assist with businesses with handling all of that day-to-day running of the business, the payroll, all of that
all
sort of
the
stuff.
boring stuff, right? No, so
look, I can't say it's going to be boring, but yeah.
I love it. Now, listen, honestly, it's so funny that you said the receipts were piling up and all that jazz, because I remember this was when, oh God, this was 8 years ago now, nearly or more, 9, because I was pregnant, very heavily pregnant with my first child. And I remember I didn't have an accountant. This was because I started my studio about 9 years ago. And I didn't have an accountant or a bookkeeper or anything. And I was running my own business at the time. And I remember I went into this accounting office, and like I said, I had no bookkeeper. I just used to, those little cheapo tax agents that you just get on the street and you're like, $100, I'll do your return, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
I used to always just go to those kind of guys for my own personal tax, because it didn't matter. But then when I started running a business, it started getting more complex. But a decade ago, I didn't realize how complex it would be. And so what I did was I was building up these receipts in a shoebox. I used to have the shoebox method, and everyone listening, I don't do that anymore. I'm very streamlined in my
wonderful.
That doesn't happen. But a decade ago, it did.
Yeah.
And so I was heavily pregnant, and I still remember going into this accountant's office with a box of receipts, papers, documents, folders, and I was about 8 months, and I was so tired, and it was hot, and at that time of year, and I started crying, and I handed her a box, and I said, I'm about to give birth in a couple of weeks, and I need your help. Please, please help me.
Well, look, I have to commend you for asking for help. That's wonderful. That's the first step.
So, and that was the missing key. It wasn't that I didn't have the accountant. What I didn't realize at the time is that I wasn't bookkeeping. So I was waiting till the end of the year and holding receipts. And this was before I was GST registered, which I am now. Like I said, it was a new business and all that jazz. But it was so overwhelming that here I was, literally barefoot and pregnant, in the accountant's office, in tears, with laying out, not kidding, paperwork all over her desk and a box of receipts. And she just looked at me and she said, don't worry. She goes, normally I would not.
Well,
but I'm going to help you. She said,
that's wonderful.
I can see you're about to have a baby. Let me help you. And I said, thank you so much. And since then, I adopted a bookkeeper.
Perfect.
Life is good. But what I'm trying to get at is, it's so overwhelming. It is
when you're
overwhelming.
When you're starting a business, you don't learn business at school. You don't learn how to be a studio owner at school, or even when you're going to a studio, if you're a dancer or creative or something like that, you don't learn about starting a business and how to run a business. So quite often people have started their business, and it's only after the fact that they might think, oh, what do I do now? What do I do with all of this paperwork? How do I record
receipts?
Yeah.
I'm told I need to keep my receipts, but what do I actually do with them? That was actually the thing.
And
it can be quite hefty at the end of a financial year. There's a lot of paperwork, and then you're going, I'm supposed to keep all this stuff, but I don't actually know what to do.
But what for? So like when you're especially starting out in business, you've got to bootstrap it. You can't just, most of us anyway, we're doing things ourselves. We're doing the marketing ourselves. We might build our own website, things like that. And bookkeeping is one of those things that we either don't do, or, we do a little bit. We sort of know that in the background, we've heard GST enough. We've heard these things about that there's something we've got to do with these receipts. So, acknowledging that, and realizing that you don't have to do it alone. Like, the same with you, like you offer these service for these people to help who are starting out in their business and their creative business and studios and things like that. It's the same with me. So, but I'm helping with the bookkeeping side of things. So, I always say to people, don't go it alone. Even if you're bootstrapping it, there are low cost support and services out there to people where you can just get help. So just ask questions in Facebook groups, find people on Facebook, on the internet that can help you to do this work yourself so that you can learn how to do it, but you don't have to do it alone. to be in a group with other people as well, to get support from other people, to see what other people are doing.
Yeah, and I think as well, the thing about bookkeeping is that the daunting task of it is that if you're doing it yourself, and I did do it myself for a few years before I enlisted a bookkeeper. Just I don't know, how long have I had a bookkeeper now? Maybe 3-4 years. But at first, no, I learnt MYOB, and now I use Xero. But I think is there something called Cashbooks or QuickBooks?
Before that, there would have been a QuickBooks or a Cashbooks before that.
I first started on QuickBooks, and then I learned MYOB, and then now I do Xero, but I've got a bookkeeper and accountant, all the people doing
who handles it all.
That works out just nice for me. But for a few years there, I bootstrapped, like you mentioned, and I learnt it. And what I did was I hired a consultant to train me and teach me. That's similar to what you might be doing now, but in a more
that's what I'm doing.
Community group style thing. This was just one-on-ones, but I went in and they just would teach me how to use it. And each month for a few months, I'd have a consult and I'd check in and show them what I'm doing, and they'd give me feedback. And that's how I learnt MYOB. I don't have a degree in accounting. I certainly am not a mathematician. I have I have common sense. And I like to think that I'm an intelligent human being, but I definitely, I'm not an analyst, so it's really interesting because that is the only way that I felt like I could release the overwhelm of it, by getting a coach in and teaching me how to do it, until I built my business to a point where I could afford to, now I don't do it. Yeah. So that's that bootstrapping phase you're talking about. How important
that's right. That's right.
That sort of feedback. And what if you do it yourself? Can you get it wrong? Like how wrong do you get it? And what's the impact of that? Because that's the scary part.
Yeah. And I think that's what does scare people, especially creatives, is numbers for a lot of them don't come naturally. So even like thinking about what you've got to do with the software, or how to use the software, or what receipts I've got to keep, why do I have to keep all this stuff? It can be intimidating. So having somebody to just reassure you, that what you're doing is right, or to guide you and things like that. Just like these creatives in these studios that they're running are guiding other people to dance, or to, in their studios, whatever they might teach. So, it's getting a guide, I suppose, or a teacher to help you, but also just to have a go. Like, you can get it wrong, but nobody's ever died because they got their bookkeeping wrong. Let me just say that, so there's not, the worst thing that could happen is that you might have recorded some transaction wrong, things like that. If you get your accountant to review your bookkeeping, they will make corrections. They will fix things up. If you've lodged your BAS and you get a couple of things wrong, that's totally fine. If they, that tax office might do an audit of your books, and you might show them your books. And look, if you're honest and they find something that you might have done wrong, and you work with the tax office, and that's the scary thing. People think, I'm going to get in so much trouble. But if you work with the tax office, they know self-employed people who are bootstrapping in themselves, that they're not accountants, they're not bookkeepers. They just want people to have sufficient knowledge to be able to do it. So if you go ahead and do it and you get audited and something pops up to say, oh, look, you haven't done this right. If you work with the tax office, they are really reasonable in helping you correct your mistakes. And, even the tax office has a lot of training on their website for people when they're doing their own BAS and handling all of the numbers and to understand all of that stuff. But, but if you have that guide or that person to help you that you can turn to, either in a one-on-one situation or in a group situation where you can learn things, just helps give you that confidence to know that you're doing things right, or to give you a process even on what to do. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed, like even non-creatives, they sit down and they go to do their bookkeeping and they're like, well, where do I start? It's like, well, what do I do first? It's not knowing what to do and when to do it. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid it, because it's just, no, I'll just push that over there and I'll get into it later.
It's unavoidable. This is the actual point that I think we need to really absorb here. So if you're avoiding doing your books, it's actually unavoidable. you either have to do them or you have to hire someone to do them.
Yeah.
So there's no other option, you know,
Yeah,
like
really,
you don't want to be barefoot and pregnant at 8 months, walking into an accountant's office
and
being the
taking
guy,
12 months worth of records to them.
100%, being the one that's crying at the table with the shoebox of receipts, because that's what it actually looks like when you dig, you know, bury your head in the sand and you say, I'm not going to do it. So how do we get started? You know, like what?
Look, it's having a plan. You know, it's like, you know, like I suppose like I'm no creative, but I have been in a musical or two in my time.
Can you tell me what musical? Sorry, I must intervene right now.
Look, it was about 6 years ago, and I can't even remember the name of it. But it was for our local town. It was before I had my last daughter, my daughter, and I can't even remember the name.
That's all right, but you did this as a proper adult.
As an adult, yeah. And so I was a break dancer. And so I had to learn some breakdancing moves. So so it's a bit like, you know, have a plan, I suppose, when you're learning to dance. You learn the first few moves and you get that pat down, and then you add a few more moves on, and you get, then you add it to the first sequence and you get that down, and so on and so forth. So until you've got the whole routine down. And so learning to bookkeeping is very similar. Like, you don't just go and try and learn everything, you know. And again, you don't need to learn everything. You know, if I'm doing a break dance, I don't need to learn how to ballet or anything like that. So it's only worrying about the things you do need to learn about to handle your bookkeeping for your business. And so all different businesses are different.
And
so
the beautiful thing is software these days is so magic.
Oh,
like,
yes,
I don't need to, like, I still do, I don't have a bookkeeper for payroll. I do my own payroll. And like I said, I use Xero now, and it's so basic. Like, it spits it out for you. Like, I don't have to calculate superannuation or tax or, you know, I think it's so
and that's
worth
definitely
investing in these softwares, because I don't have to think about that. That is done for me. It creates the pay slip and we're done. Like, it's so important.
Having all of that, all that automation in place makes bookkeeping a lot easier. I would say that prior to that, having the setup, if you need help with the setup, getting the setup in the background right is essential. And then once you've got the setup right, you're totally fine with processing, with handling your own payroll, handling all of that stuff. But it's just having that step-by-step of knowing what to do and when to do it. So, you know, just like when you're learning to dance, you might just learn the basics of Xero, you know, and when you've just started out in your business, you probably don't have payroll, you know, all of those things. So, you know, you don't need to worry about learning that at the very beginning. You just handle recording your receipts, recording your expenses. You might have a filing cabinet that, you know, you stick your receipts in and everything like that. And as you get really good at that, you might then add another process. So then you might decide, okay, well, I'm going to have a paperless office. I'm not going to have all these receipts in a shoebox anymore. I'm going to handle a paperless office, you know, and that involves, you know, storing things in the cloud and in Xero and all of that. Rather than having paper receipts, we have electronic copies of everything and not having to print everything out when you're doing that. So, you know, that's the next stage. You don't have to do it all at once. And I think that's what makes it a bit overwhelming for people, is thinking, oh, I've got to do this right. I've got to get it right. Whereas, you know, learning to dance, you're not going to get the move perfect straight away. It takes practice, and it takes doing it over and over again to become confident and get it, you know, to a level where you can then add the next move or add the next process on. So, you know, when you're just starting out, you know, getting those basics right, it's definitely will, and just getting the basics of understanding your software as well. So the income side of things, the expenses side of things, you know, just learning those basics about the software and getting comfortable with the software really is the first step. So that's what I would say.
From a team perspective, like I said, when I first started, I had no bookkeeping support. Then I got a consultant to help me do it for myself. I did that for a few years. And then eventually I just got so busy and, you know, I enlisted someone professionally to do the service for me. From a team perspective, when do you think it's time to make that shift from being the bookkeeper and the bootstrapper to saying, you know what, I think we're ready to really outsource this? Is there some sort of level that you think you need to be at?
I think it'd be different. Yeah, definitely different for different businesses and different size businesses, definitely. But if you're finding that you are perhaps your business is expanding into a level where you've got multiple like income streams, perhaps you've got a lot of transactions, high volume, but also high dollar. You are definitely, I would say profitable. Like some people might think they will outsource it early on and it's costing them. But they do have time then to do bring the income in. But I think when you're early on in your business, you don't have a lot of transactions, so it's easy and you can find the time to do it yourself. But when you find yourself not doing it, then like say you're doing your bookkeeping and then you're struggling to find time because you've got so much work and you've got so many customers coming in, that sort of thing. You might like just decide start outsourcing then. And outsourcing doesn't mean that you have to outsource the whole lot, like say your business is still growing, you want to make sure you're still profitable. You might decide, okay, well, I'm just going to outsource the BAS. I'm going to still do all of the data entry, but I'm going to outsource the BAS to prepare my BAS return. So that means somebody's going to review my work, they'll fix things up, all of that sort of stuff for me. And then you might
just
decide,
to clarify
okay,
too, just because sometimes we do have international listeners, mostly Australian.
Yeah.
What is the BAS? So
your BAS,
that's for GST registration.
Yeah, so for GST registered business, each month or each quarter, depending on the size of your business, you'll lodge a business activity statement or a BAS. And this is where you just report to the Australian Tax Office your sales that you've made and the GST you've collected. And for overseas businesses, GST is a bit like VAT. So VAT is like an extra tax that they in other countries and stuff like that. So, and then you report that to the tax office and then you pay that GST to the tax office. So, yeah, so you might outsource that. And then as you get bigger, you might decide to just outsource your recording of your expenses, just part of that bookkeeping process. It doesn't mean
like
that
I
you
mentioned,
have to
I still do payroll, but that's
that's right.
Yeah. And, I still do that. I don't do BAS.
Yeah. You might get to the stage where your business has grown so much. Like I still have done for you bookkeeping clients where I do all of their bookkeeping. But on top of that, I do their payroll and I do their accounts payable as well. So at the end of the month, I handle all of the paying of their bills as well. So that's, for a level of business where things are humming along, you're profitable, you've got things coming along, and you just want to take that off your plate so you can handle more on growing your business. Definitely, if you can find somebody to handle that for you. But, it doesn't always have to be all or nothing, but definitely that first stage, even if you can just get support with a group container, like I have a small club that I have where I've got small businesses that are just starting out. We come and get help from me. Or, if you get a one-on-one consult like what you did in the start. So, you can get somebody just to have a look and help you out and just sort of hold your hand a little bit when you start. Yeah. So I do one-on-one consults with people as well. And I do Xero setups. And if people are coming from, if they're very start, they might use spreadsheets or things like that, then they might decide to start using Xero. I can help them with a setup. I've got a number of businesses that have transitioned, like you talked about using MYOB before, and then you went to Xero. So I do that sort of thing as well. So I can help you transfer your data over to Xero as well. So Xero is the only program I really teach people in. There are hundreds out there, but
I know.
I specialize
I think
Xero.
I prefer the Xero. And like I said, I've done QuickBooks, I've done MYOB, or I say MYOB, I've done, and Xero, and I find Xero to be the best. Also, Xero connects to my studio software. I use DanceBiz. And actually, anyone listening, I can offer you a 2-month trial with my promo code JLDance. I'll pop that in the show notes for you if you're looking for a software system that connects to a payment system. Because this DanceBiz program we do, it's got everything: roll call, client contacts, everything, invoicing, all of it. Direct debit is connected, all of it, and it connects to Xero, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
So just having software that speaks to each other, I find Xero to be the best one for us.
Definitely. And there are so many, like they call them add-ons, add-on software that connects to Xero. So, like you talked about, the program that you've got connects, and so all that financial information flows through. What that does is saves you time from manually entering that data into Xero, and it reduces the risk of errors. So, when you're typing information in, you can accidentally type numbers the wrong way. If you can avoid all of that by having another software that integrates with Xero, that's really great. So if you're looking at, like a customer relationship manager or even a more detailed payroll software, studio software, when you're looking at that other software, does it integrate with Xero, especially if you are using Xero? Is one of the questions you really need to ask yourself, because it just saves so much time rather than manually entering.
And by the way, I wanted to mention the BAS thing about having some international listeners, because last week we hit number 22 on the Canadian. Thank you to Canada for this.
Wow.
I love that. I mean, who would have thought, right?
That's pretty cool.
So we've got some Canadian friends out there listening, and we hit 22 on the performing arts charts on Apple, and I thought that's pretty cool. So I have to acknowledge that, because it's really lovely to have those international listeners.
And even
regardless of BAS or not, and all of that jazz, I feel like it doesn't matter. This information is absolutely relevant, because bookkeeping is a universal skill that we must have, or a universal process within every business, no matter where you're from. And like you said, when you're starting small, that's when you do bootstrap and do it yourself. Like when I first started my studio, I had 12 students. So it didn't make sense to pay someone to do it for me. That's why I thought it was more cost effective, and I had the time. And like you said, the transaction numbers were low, so I could do it.
That's right.
Once I started servicing hundreds of people a year, that's when it changed. And I'm like, okay, where do I want to focus my attention on? And that's when it shifted for me.
It also comes down to, as well, you can't bury your head in the sand. As much as we would like to ignore the money side of business, we just love helping people. That's why we go into it. If we can just ignore the money side of business, it would be so much easier. But unfortunately, not the case. And, if we really want to grow businesses, successful businesses, profitable businesses where we don't have to go back to our 9-to-5 job, then understanding your bookkeeping, and then ultimately understanding those numbers that you can get out of that bookkeeping, are really important. And by doing it yourself, you're, not burying your head in the sand. You're learning about those numbers and the background, the very beginning of the background, because there's no use in running some financial reports. We like to run our profit and loss and our balance sheet, and there's no use in looking at those reports and not understanding how those numbers come about.
That's what I wanted to ask you, actually. You've just led me there, which is great. And that is, what do we need to look at? So when we look at a profit and loss statement, what exactly are we looking at? What are the item lines that are the most critical to the health of our business?
Yeah. Look, you're looking at profit. So income minus expenses gives us profit, the bottom line. We always want that to be positive. We always want our income to be more than our expenses. Obviously, when you're starting a business, that's not going to be the case. You're going to have a lot of setup costs for the first few years. You might not even make a profit because, you're still growing. You've still got a lot of expenses, things like that. But really having a plan when it comes to your income, I'm going to say the word budget, really, even from the very beginning, if you've got a budget, you've got a goal, you've got a plan. And I think there's this idea around, if you don't meet your budget, or how do you know, how do I know what my expense is going to be? How do I know what my income is going to be? All it is a plan, is a goal. And if you don't reach that goal, or your plan doesn't go according to how you've got it written on paper, that's totally okay. But it's having that plan in place so that you can get that skill, have that skill of planning and budgeting, so that as your business grows, you have that skill and can do it better. But when it comes to your profit and loss then, and looking at your profit and loss, what you're looking at is your actual numbers. So there's a couple of things that I like to do, is looking at your actual numbers for a certain period of time to your budget. Because looking at your numbers just for like, say, the whole year or even 1 month, it's not going to tell you much. It's not going to give you like, well, am I doing okay? Like, how do I know if I'm doing okay financially in my business? And so there's a couple of different reports that I like to look at, and that's comparative reports. So I like to look at this month's report, and I might look at it compared to my budget. So I'm looking in columns, but I might look at my profit and loss actual figures and I compare it to my budget. And if it's more or less than my budget, and even those line by line items, with my different kinds of expenses and my different kinds of income, it will tell me if I'm meeting my goals or I'm meeting my budget. And if I'm not, if I'm over on my expenses, I can then look at those expenses and see where I can save. So it's really comparing the actual information to the budget. The other one that I like to do is compare a certain period with the previous periods. So, for example, if I look at July, I might look at June, the last 6 months, even individually on a month by month basis.
2020 and 2021, everyone.
Yeah. So, it's comparing them for the last few months so that I can see if this month, how I'm doing compared to previous months. Because if I just look at this month on its own or this year on its own, it's not going to really tell me how I went. Yeah, it's going to give you a figure at the bottom, but is that figure good? Is it bad? Is it better? How do I know? So having a look at that
story,
Yes, that's right. So if you can have a look at the previous month and the last few months, is my income going up? Is it steady? Has it dipped? There's certain periods of the year where people's income grows really high, like in a retail business, they've got that Christmas period, where their sales, historically usually are a little peak, and certain times of the year when your expenses are going to be a little bit higher than other periods. But it's knowing in advance by planning and having a budget when your income and expenses are going to go down, and comparing that, to the actual figures and comparing it historically to see, I can see my expenses are going down. Yeah,
this is important because in a studio business, you have peaks and troughs, right? Like every business does. And typically, when there are times of the year where your studio is closed because of holiday seasons and whatnot.
Yes.
Just knowing that during that period, or, and if you can't afford to keep the lights on in your studio or put food on your table, then you're going to have to come up with a plan for that period, whether that be, rationing the money differently or having an income generating activity during that time that isn't necessarily related to your programs. You might say, I'm going to run a school holiday boot camp. I'm going to do workshops. I'm going to sell this, or I'm going to go and work casually for that month because I know that's that period of time, and just having a plan in place. So I think that's really, really important. I do think though, sometimes I've heard, and I don't know about if you think this is important or not, but looking at your balance sheet as well is a really important report. Can you explain what a balance sheet is?
So the balance sheet, while the profit and loss shows your income and expenses, the balance sheet will show your assets and your liabilities. So assets being the things you own, like I own this computer that I'm on right now, I own my house. And then I have liabilities, money I owe to people. So currently I owe the tax office money. Currently, I owe my social media manager money. So they're my liabilities, the money that I owe to people. And
so can I ask a question on that? If an invoice comes in and that invoice is, given to your bookkeeper, but it's not paid yet, would that be on your balance sheet as a liability?
Yes. So it would appear in your profit and loss. So there's two types of profit and loss. A cash profit and loss, so that basically says when you've been paid and when you've paid your bills. It's basically when the cash has come in and then when the cash has come out. You also have what we call an accruals profit and loss. And accruals is when the expense or the income occurred, not necessarily that you paid it. Okay, so when you haven't paid a bill, it's an expense, but it's also an account payable because you haven't paid it yet. Okay, and when you do pay it, what happens is your bank account balance goes down. Okay, so it means that you've paid your bill, your bank account balance goes down, and you're back to even again.
Yeah.
So you have assets and you have liabilities. The goal is to increase your assets and either maintain or decrease your liabilities. So what that's going to do is increase your wealth. So assets minus liabilities give us our equity or our net assets or our net worth. This is what I'm worth. Like in the news, they talk about, the millionaires, and they're like, 1.2 million or 3 million or billion.
Kim Kardashian, net worth, all that jazz.
Yeah. So what they're talking about is their assets, the things they own, and what they're worth, and minus the liabilities that they owe people. Okay, so
that's cool.
To grow your wealth, and so how that relates to your profit and loss then is, as you make profit, generally your wealth goes up. So as you make profit this year, you might then invest that into your bank account. That's going to increase your assets, or you might buy a studio with it, for example. That's going to be an asset for you.
Can I tell you, I put aside a percentage for profit each month into a holdings account, and what I do with it is I use the profit to pay for my house cleaner, to have a cleaner in my house. And also any excess that after the cleaner is paid, I put into shares.
So, yes, perfect.
So
perfect.
That's what I'm doing.
And so that might be something, that's something outside of your business. So, as a studio owner, you might you pay yourself a wage or have something like that where you take a certain amount out of the business each month.
So I have a wage and then I have profit. I think wage is so important, and too many studio owners do not pay themselves. And what I would ask you to do is, if you look at your numbers and if you can't afford to pay yourself a wage at all, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the way the business is running, and you need to look at ways to either increase your revenue or decrease your expenses. And that's what I did. I did a big activity last year, especially post-COVID, because COVID was just about keeping the doors open. We did what we had to do. Then we came to the end of it, and there was some debt accrued because COVID sucked. And that was natural, and we can manage it, and that's fine. But I thought, I don't want to just spend all our profits now that business is back to normal on repaying crappy COVID debt. I still want to pay a wage. I still want to live my life. I still want to have some profit and shares and do things for my kids. So I looked at what can I cut, and I just did a big cut. I looked at every expense in the business, and I removed programs that were running in the red, or anything. Activities that were low profit that were taking me away from our high profit activities. And I thought, no, we must invest our energy and time into that. Not this thing that gives me $10. That gives me $10,000.
And the only way that you were able to make those decisions about your business was having you had your bookkeeping done.
Correct. I was able to look at those accounts and look at those. And again, these balance sheets and all these profit and loss statements that we're talking about, you don't need to be a rocket science. You just need to have a software system and keep up to date with your bookkeeping. The software
keeping up to date is key.
Reports. They do it for you. I literally just type in my Xero software. I'll go, show me my profit and loss statement from this time period. Boom, it's there. Show me my balance sheet from this time period. Boom, it's there. And from that, I even select, show me the percentages, so I can see 30% went to wages, 50% went to venue hire. And then I'll go, whoa, that's a lot. We're spending too much on venue hire. How do we reduce that? When I did that activity alone,
your plan.
When I did that activity alone, I found out that we had an error in one of our venues that we hire, where it was only 1 hour a week, but there was a booking error that we found that said we were using space that we didn't use. And now that was our error. It was my office manager that made that mistake. That's okay. It happens. But because I was diligent and I went through that process, I was able to identify that error. And that was costing us $60 a week. Now, $60 a week to some people might be not much, but that's something. When you start finding these things, I found out that I was still subscribed to Audible. I'm like, I don't even use Audible. I listen to podcasts, all of that stuff. It's just crazy. And when we culled that, all of those expenses, I'm on a tangent here because I get very passionate about this.
No, that's wonderful.
My goodness, the money we found, I was able to put my wage back to where I was pre-COVID. I was able to increase my wage back, still have a couple of percent going to profit, and keep my staff, keep the doors open. You know, this is the thing. People don't realize.
Come up with new offers, come up with new ideas.
Correct. We focus so much on attracting new business. Sometimes we forget about, let's look at what we have and how we can improve what we have. Look,
and the only reason that you were able to do that is because you had that plan. you were looking at those numbers, you were looking at that budget, that idea of where you thought your business should be in terms of those percentages. And when they move outside those percentages, you were able to then
I had a problem because I was looking down the barrel of, I think I'm going to have to half my wage and to make up for these. And then I went, wait a minute, no, I'm not doing that. I started looking at those percentages and going, this isn't right. I'm going to fix this. And I was able, within a month, I'd fixed the problem, cut the fat, cancelled programs, removed some clients that just weren't serving us, that it's just low profit activity, not worth it. Reduce some of the offers that we had, like we had value inclusions in our student memberships that weren't actually benefiting our clients but costing us a lot of money. I looked at our assistant teachers and thought about our staffing. Do we really need those people on site? Do we need that level of qualification on site as an assistant?
That's right.
All of that stuff. But look,
this and having the numbers, I was going to say, having the numbers,
we could talk forever.
I know.
You see, I'm like getting excited about bookkeeping, y'all. Right? I'm getting excited because, numbers can be fun when you get them right. They're not fun when you're getting them wrong, and it's depressing as all hell, and you can end up in the accountant's office 6 years barefoot and pregnant. And that is when it's stressful, or when you're running in the red and you know it and you don't, and you bury your head in the sand and you don't want to look at it.
We don't want that.
Can't do that, because all that happens is you keep running in the red, and then next thing you know, you're closing the doors. And worse than closing your doors is having a debt that you didn't even know you had.
Yes.
And you've got bad debtors and you've got all these bills.
And that doesn't go away just because you shut those doors.
You have to pay them now with the wages from the job you had to get. And that's even more depressing. We don't want that, No, and so that's what we want to avoid. Look, I would love to ask you some questions before we wrap up today, because you could see my energy increased over time.
I know. I could talk about this forever.
We got there. My passion started coming. I love it. But, what does success look like to you? What does it look like to you?
Oh, look, and my success actually doesn't come down to my numbers. I want to make sure I'm running a profitable business, but success for me and why I started my business was time with my children, time with my daughter. I had a goal when I started my business that I wanted to have 3 days a week work, 2 days a week at home. I'm still growing my business. Definitely not where I want it to be financially, but it's profitable. It pays me a living wage, and I can spend 2 days a week with my daughter. So to me, that's success in my business. So
that's awesome. Who or what inspires you most?
Oh, look, it has to be my mum, right? So I think my love of finance came from her. So I have this budgeting technique that I call the envelope method. And I learned it from my mum because she was always writing on the back of an old envelope her little budget, like how much she had coming in. She was a self-employed for my whole life. And I always remember her writing on the back of envelopes, like what her income is for the month, what expenses she's got going out the month, like the rego for the car or the phone bill or the, all of those things that you have. I can still remember to this day, like envelopes around her house. So I call it my envelope method. And, it's so simple, and you don't have to make it complicated, so it's a simple envelope method.
And that's the era of cash too, isn't it? Where you could put the cash of what you needed in different envelopes.
Yeah. Well, she would just write on the back of some random empty envelope the bills she had coming in, what money she had coming in, and how much she had left over. So, and, she became a single mum when I was 12. My dad passed away and she had 3 children to raise. And, so I think, I definitely learned my finance from her, my love of money from her, and just, her ability to just, push on through all of the adversity in her life, to have a business, to have children. That.
From the back of an envelope, And that's how simple it can be. It's amazing, isn't it? And she managed to do that with you.
That was her plan.
Mom, that's beautiful. So what's next, Kimberly? What's on the horizon for you?
Oh, well, my business, my bookkeeping coach, I just want to help more people, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm reducing the actual done for you bookkeeping that I'm doing so that I can help more people. So just provide that support, either one-on-one, I do one-on-one with people, but also I have a membership that people can come to. It's a weekly membership. So we have weekly calls. We do different things in those calls for those people who are bootstrapping their bookkeeping and need a little bit of help. You know, and I have that group so that I can help as many people as I can, because there's only so much one-on-one you can do. You would know that in your studio.
Yes,
but so having this low-cost container for people just means that I can help as many people as I want, because I didn't want to go back to my 9 to 5, and I don't want other people who have given up their 9 to 5 to either spend more time with their family or follow their passion to have to do that. And definitely knowing your bookkeeping and the numbers behind your bookkeeping and the bookkeeping behind your numbers,
yes,
definitely is a step there. So.
And where can people find you, Kimberly, if they want to search online?
Yeah, so on all of the channels, My Bookkeeping Coach, so at My Bookkeeping Coach on Instagram and Facebook, and also my website, mybookkeepingcoach.com.au. They can contact me via there. Or DM me on Instagram or Facebook. And
we'll pop a link for everyone in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
With your bookkeeping. I know, I'm so sorry I said it was boring at the beginning.
I hope I brought the passion. No, I hope I brought the passion. I hope I brought the passion for people
always
to know their numbers, as well as they love their business in studios. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Studio Biz Success, an amazing and accessible online educational platform for performing arts studio owners designed to help you grow your business with confidence and get your results. Check it out at josephinelancuba.com, along with other great industry resources to help you leap into the studio biz you deserve. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. You can tag me on social media at Josephine Lancuba and give it a review. Your support helps the show to grow so I can continue to provide you with useful, informative content. I'm Josephine Lancuba, your biggest cheerleader. Thanks for listening and shine bright.